Hello everyone and welcome to my guide on how to do the second boss on the Sunwell Plateau for WoW TBC Classic. The second boss is Brutallus. That's this one. Let's get into it. Brutallus is a relatively straightforward boss with not many mechanics. The difficulty comes from his insane damage output. Tight mechanical execution as well as high DPS and healer requirements are both needed to beat this boss. His first ability is Meteor Slash, which deals 20,000 fire damage, split between all targets hit, and puts a debuff on them that increases damage taken from fire by 75%. This effect stacks. The raid will need to split into two different soak groups to split the damage. His next ability is Burn, which places a debuff on the target that lasts 60 seconds. It works much like the Curse debuff from Caligos in that it increases damage exponentially as it ticks down. The difference is that this cannot be dispelled and needs to be healed through. However, immunities like Ice Blocks and Pally Bubbles do work to get rid of it. Burn will also spread to anyone nearby the afflicted players, which means the raid needs to be loosely spread at all times. The radius to spread Burn is very low. You basically need to be touching the other person to spread it. Spreading burns is one of the easiest ways to wipe, so everyone needs to be hyper vigilant of burn positioning. Next is his Stomp ability. Stomp does a good chunk of damage to the tank as well as reduces their armor by 50% for 10 seconds. At the beginning of the fight, we can avoid Stomp damage through a carefully planned taunting rotation. But as the fight progresses, the tanks will have to soak more and more of the Stomp debuff until all of it will need to be healed through. I will go over the taunting rotation later. Finally, Brutallus has a 6-minute enrage timer. He has around 10.5 million health, so the entire raid will need to average above 29,000 DPS in order to kill the boss before his enrage. All players need to be fully consumed and ready to rock. Before the pull, split the ranged DPS and healers into two even groups and have them stack in a triangle formation outwards from the two tanking positions. Let the healers stand closer to the boss so they can be in range of more people. When that is set up, pull the boss directly between the two groups and have the first tank point him towards the first soak group. Melee will loosely spread behind the boss. If they spread well enough, they will not have to move for the rest of the fight. Once you find a good spot, make sure to stand still. Avoid the habit of dancing back and forth on this boss as it leads to more burn spreads. If there is an unusually high amount of melee for this fight and they are having trouble spreading, then they can run through the boss to X if they get burned. But that is not ideal since they will begin parrying the boss. For everyone else, if you get burned, run to X to drop your stacks and be in range of both healer groups. Make sure the boss is positioned so that people standing on X will not be hit by future meteor slashes. If a burn victim gets hit by a meteor slash, they will die from the increased fire damage. Burn will need a dedicated healer since it lasts 60 seconds, and he casts it every 20 seconds. This means there can be up to 3 burns active at a time. Resto Druids are great for this to keep the burn victims completely hotted up. For the last seconds of burn, the damage is insane and will probably need another healer spamming direct heals. The last 5 seconds of burn does almost 20,000 damage by itself. Pop any defensive cooldowns, potions, and healthstones when burn is about to end. As I said before, the tank taunt rotation is very precise and even one screw up will lead to a wipe. Here is a timeline of events that shows exactly when each tank should be taunting. After the boss is pulled, there will be 2 meteor slashes and then the first stomp will be cast before the next meteor slash. Tank 2 taunts just after the first stomp and before the next meteor slash. Then, Tank 2 will take 3 meteor slashes, and a little after the third slash, another stomp will go out. Tank 1 will taunt immediately after that stomp goes out. Tank 1 will then take 2 more meteor slashes before the third stomp goes out. Tank 1 will need to soak a few seconds of stomp here until after the third meteor slash goes out. Then Tank 2 will taunt again. 2 more meteor slashes later, and the fourth stomp will be cast on Tank 2. At this point, Tank 2 will soak almost an entire stomp duration before Meteor Slash 3 goes out and Tank 1 taunts back. From this point onwards, each tank will have to soak an entire 10 seconds of stomp before the next tank can taunt back. Tanks will just taunt after 3 slashes. Tanks call out before you taunt so that healers know when to switch targets. You should also communicate when you are about to take a stomp and for how long. The boss by itself does incredible damage and anytime healing stomp is very difficult for the healers. For this boss, make sure not to cast Curse of Recklessness unless you start having trouble with the enrage timer. Also, Scorpion Stings and improved Demo Shouts need to have 100% uptime. Anything we can do to lower boss damage output is ideal. If the healing requirement of stomp damage is too high for the group, then you can use a 3 tank setup. To do this, the third tank should stand with melee so that they do not get stacks of Meteor Slash. Then, in between Meteor Slashes and before the stomp goes out, the third tank will move over to the current tank's position and taunt off of them. Once the stomp is on the third tank, then the original tank will taunt back. This works to bait stomp onto a different target so it never has to be healed through. However, if you do this, then it means that you will either be losing an extra DPS or healer for that third tank position, which is not ideal. Another way of achieving the same results is for the engineers to drop target dummies onto the tank's head just before a stomp is cast. These target dummies will taunt off the boss, eat the stomp, and then the boss will go back to the tank. This has been working on the PTR, but I am not sure if it will work on live. And that about wraps it up. Brutallus is a tight DPS and healing check. If everyone in the raid pays attention to burns, and tanks know their taunt rotation, this boss will fall. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again in my next video for the next boss in Sunwell Plateau. Good luck out there, everybody.